Okay, so now we're going to talk about what's called an alternating sequence. And what they mean by that is it goes either positive, negative, or negative, positive, positive. The signs are alternating, okay? That probably doesn't mean too much. So let's go back to our original sequence we had. It was 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, right? And then it kept going. Now, if we wanted it to be alternating, one way it could be, it could be -2, 4, -8, 16, -32. Okay, how do we get it to change the signs? We have to use, in this case, we're going to use -1 to the nth power. Because -1 to the first power is going to be -1, but -1 squared is going to be 1. So see, and I'll be multiplying it times whatever the a sub n is, whatever a sub n is. I shouldn't write it that way, probably. In our case, remember it was, I'll put it in a different color, 2 to the nth power. That's how we generated the terms. Okay, so you'd want that times 2 to the first, that would be -2. But then here you're going to have 1 times 2 squared, which is going to be the +4. So that's going to give us this sequence right here. But we have to use this -1 component. So to get our sequence, we would have to write a sub n equals -1 to the nth times, I'll just put a dot for times, 2 to the nth. That would get us the terms we want, okay? That would get us this. Okay, so here's the tricky part though. What if we wanted it to go to -4, 8, -16, 32, like that. Now what's the difference? Well, here I'm starting with a negative, and now I'm starting with a positive. So probably what I would do is I would write it as a to the nth equals, you have to have a -1, but it's going to be to the n plus 1 times 2 to the nth. Now, hopefully I have some room so you can see this. If you put in a 1, so a sub 1, you'd have -1 to the 1 plus 1 times 2 to the first. And that would get you -1 squared, so that's going to be positive now, and 2, so that's going to get you the 2 that you want. And then if you did a sub 2, so I'm using this right here, I know it's in green, I'll switch to the darker color so you can see it. A sub 2 would be -1 to the 2 plus 1 times 2 to the second. And then that would give you -1 cubed times 4. And that's going to be a -1 times 4. And that'll get you your -4 like you want. See, that gets you the -4. So what it's going to do is it's still going to alternate positive, negative. It's all a matter of where you start. So if you want the first term to be positive, let's write this. First term positive. Okay, that doesn't really say term, but pretend like it does. Positive. Then you're going to use, I would use -1 to the n plus 1. You can also use -1 to the n minus 1, but it doesn't matter. It's going to do the same thing. It has to do with whether you're an even exponent or an odd exponent, whether it's going to be positive or negative. If you want the first term to be, and this is for alternating sequences. Alternating sequences. If you want the first term to be negative, use that. Okay, it's kind of ran out of room, but okay. Hopefully it makes some sense. They're going to give us one to practice on here. It says write the first 5 terms. So all we have to do is go back to our a sub 1, a sub 2, better leave a little room, a sub 3, and then 2 more. Okay, so we're going to put, oh, where can I put them? I'll put a sub 4, a sub 5. I don't know how much room I'm going to need. Okay, so here's what gives us, that's the explicit formula. Look at all the n's in there. Well, for the first term, all those n's are going to be 1. So I'm going to have negative 1 to the first power, 1 squared over 1 plus 1. Okay, so that's going to make this is going to be negative, right? And then 1 squared is 1, so I've got in the numerator negative 1 over 2. So that's the first term. Okay, now we'll go to the second term. I'm going to have negative 1 squared times 2 squared over 2 plus 1. So that's going to be, I always go back to this formula to plug in my n value. Okay, so now in the numerator, it's going to be a positive 1 times 4, and the bottom is going to be 3. So there's the second term. All right, now the third term. We just keep doing this. Plug in the 3 for all the n's. So it's going to be negative. We know it's going to alternate because of that thing we've got going on there. So it's going to be negative 9 over 4. And then a sub 4, so it's kind of like, how big is this going to get? 4 squared over 4 plus 1, which is going to be 16. It's going to be positive because you've got an even exponent on that negative 1, and then a 5 in the denominator. And we write these as fractions, by the way. Okay, and then the last one, negative 1 to the 5th power times 5 squared over 5 plus 1, which is going to be negative 25 over 6. Okay, so my sequence is going to be negative 1/2, 4/3, negative 9/4, 16/5, and negative 25 over 6. Those are the first 5 terms. I was a rebel and I didn't put the squiggly brackets, so